We are talking to Nandita Das, actor and director whose first film Firaaq has recently hit the theatres. It's a hard-hitting story, or several stories, in fact 5 stories, of both the victims and the perpetrators of violence in Gujarat in 2002. Tell me, Nandita, I mean, generally when people make films on subjects of communal tension and strife and so on, there's a great deal of anxiety about trying to balance what you're trying to say. That has obviously not played a very important part in your film. How and why?
Well, you can't balance something that is already imbalanced. If the reality is skewed, if the fact is that, if it was a regular riot where there's a spontaneous combustion of violence and it is stopped by the state or whatever, the police, then it's a different scenario. If you do a film on the Sikh pogrom that happened in '84, you can't pretend that Sikhs also died and Hindus also died and X, Y, Z. Or if you're talking about the exodus of the Hindu Pandits from Kashmir, then you can't pretend that there were a whole lot of other people who also had to leave. So the reality when itself is imbalanced, or a Schindler's List, what happened in Holocaust, the Jews might be really giving a hard time to the Palestinians now, but should a film like Schindler's List be made? And if it is made, can we balance it? So I think if you're taking a context, you have to be true to that context. And when I say it's based on 1,000 true stories, the truth itself was so imbalanced that in fact it's balanced because it's imbalanced, in the sense it is what it is. And that's why I've also chosen not so much the perpetrator's point of view. Of course there are a few sort of villains of the story, but it's primarily taken from the perspective of the victims, because I think we are fast losing a sense of empathy. I mean, victims in different classes, how have they grappled with the situation? And also with the vast silent majority, how people have been silent, whether out of fear, like someone like Deepthi Naval, or someone like this Amrita Subhash, the girl who plays with Shahana, the Hindu friend, who's just not wanting to hurt her friend and feels that let time pass, let it just be. So all silent watchers are not sort of bad people. They are often, in fact, the good. And because the good remains silent,
bad, aren't they?
Some are, like some of the cops, because the cops in a way represent the state, and unfortunately in these in this carnage especially, the cops played a fairly communal role in this whole thing. So I think it is as it is as close to what it is. So I didn't try to portray it any other way.
You acted in the film Fire, which came under a lot of attack from the Hindu right. Subsequently, you were supposed to act in water.
Right.
The film came under attack. It had to be shelved. Eventually, it had to be shot outside the country with a
totally different cast and location.
Right,
and all of
right,
that.
right.
Yeah.
Now, given this history and given the fact that you had to sort of personally face some of this this violence, didn't it sort of lead to any fear about your film?
I think if you come from a deep conviction, you are in a way not wedded to the outcome. You're doing it because you believe in it strongly. And for me, it wasn't like, okay, I want to direct a film, let me look for a script. If that had been the journey, I would have looked for an easier script, probably as a first film especially. Not a complex script that has 5 stories. Every story is 5 days. You're with 5 set of actors, and I mean 1 set of actor, and every 5 days they go, new people come in. You're shifting a location. It's a headspace shift. So it was a very difficult shoot in many different ways. But I think because it came from a very deep conviction, it was more in fact to express what I was feeling. It was cathartic in many ways for me to do the film. So I don't think I had that fear of, I did think, yeah, some people will find problems with it. In fact, I didn't want to polarize people. The idea was not to have people shut us down and say, oh, it is yet another film on Gujarat, we know what she's talking about. In fact, that's why the idea was to take very ordinary stories. That what happened in Gujarat in many ways was probably even much worse. I've chosen not to take some of the stronger stories because they alienate people. They seem like this happens in films.
Absolutely.
Or it may seem like, oh, she's exaggerated it, or this is her agenda, which people like us often get accused of.
Absolutely. I found quite interesting the fact that there were suggestions of stories behind the stories that
Absolutely.
you tell. For instance, the burnt
woman's image.
The burnt woman's image, the burnt bakery,
right,
and so on, which is not a story. You
exactly.
almost expect that story to unfold,
right,
and it doesn't.
or the television, the fact
Exactly.
that the television plays an important role.
Right.
The kind of rape cases this woman describes about,
Right.
you know, how her daughters got raped and killed. So it's all, I mean, you feel the ambience, you feel the context, you know what's happening around, and these are stories that are in the homes, in that eerie kind of normalcy, a false sense of normalcy that we experience after every act of violence. Because, you know, we have seen so much of violence, whether in fiction or in reality, in all these news, that in a way we've become numb to raping and looting and killing and burning. So it's more about what goes on in the minds of people and what goes on, you know, in relationships, how relationships get altered because of all of this.
Tell me, what's been the response like? You've taken the film to several international film festivals, and reading newspaper reports and so on, one senses that the response has been excellent.
Right.
Your film has
No, it
also won
has.
awards and so on. But what's been the response here in India?
To be honest, I've been very disappointed with the kind of release the producers decided. It's like super low-keyed, where there's hardly been promoted. And often films like this get killed and then people term them as niche films, or these are only for festivals, and you know, you don't even have a chance to have sort of a level play field. I mean, at least if it's promoted in the same way, and if it still doesn't reach people, then you can say, yeah, look, we did what we could and yet it hasn't reached. But half the time these kind of films get a big beating because the marketing budgets are super small, and people who have convictions, you know, they don't have enough convictions to actually market it. A lot of people think that I wanted to show it outside and didn't, you know, brought it in much later. It was supposed to be released in October. I had finished the film end August. It was supposed to be released in October. September was Toronto Film Festival. When I made the film, in all honesty, I thought it's not going to any festival because I thought it was too layered and nuanced for only Indians. I mean, how do you know bindi lagane se, you know, what is the reference, taweez ulta kar do, and little things like that. I mean, many of the symbols, the layers, the nuances, the references was so contextual that I didn't give it to any festival. But because I've been as an actor to Toronto many times, they said, we've heard you've done a film and why don't you send it? And I sort of half-heartedly just sent it, and from one festival to the other by word of mouth and through the festival directors it travelled. It was first going to be released in October. They announced the date. Then it was going to be released beginning of December. Then they said Jan, then Feb, and then March. So it just kept getting pushed. And I thought, well, I mean, why should I judge any audience? So if it's a festival, fine. I mean, what is a festival? It's a place where different people come and see films of, you know, different countries, and it's a great platform. You are pitched against some of the best films. You get opportunities to interact with really some good minds. So I neither think festivals are the ultimate or look down upon them with disdain. They are just, you know, yet another platform. But what I was truly looking forward to was the release in India, because this is where I wanted to reach out. And it's not a...
What's been the response like here?
Well, the response, people who've seen it, it has been amazing. I mean, the number of SMSs and emails and calls that I've got. I have reconnected with friends whom I'd lost touch with. They said, oh, we found your number through, you know, like people. I have people who I don't know. I have a email ID on my website, which usually doesn't get that much used. But suddenly there is a flood of emails on that, on firaaqthefilm.com, which is the website of the film, there also. And just, I mean, I have had people who don't know me, who have championed and just SMSed hundreds of people. And someone yesterday, in fact, told me, says, you know, so-and-so SMSed me. I said, I don't even know who this person is. So, I mean, thankfully,
I got
that,
emails
you know,
and SMSs too.
right.
I did.
So good, so that's great. So I think those who have seen it, I'm so happy that they have claimed it. They feel that this is their film, it's talking about something that troubles them. Absolutely. You know, I mean, I have felt like that. I remember when Parzania came, I was so disturbed after seeing it. I in fact that night called my co-writer Shuchi, who lives in New Zealand, saying, forget it, we don't want to make this film. It's already done, you know, the issues have come out, and this is the film I'm going to champion. And she's like, are you nuts? Stop being so impulsive, you know. And there have been so many films on the partition. Similarly, there'll be different perspectives, and obviously that what you were saying made sense. It's just that I had just come out of the screening and I was so overwhelmed. So the fact that many people have taken it upon themselves to spread the word and are doing such a great job that it's even there in the third week. Otherwise, if with this kind of marketing, in the first week it would have been wiped out. You know, films don't last that long these days. So I think it's just word of mouth. that it still managed to sustain itself.
Thank you very much, Nandita, for
Thanks.
talking to newsclick.in.